The premise of Revive is that you are emerging from a vault to explore the new land, and that's pretty much it. You just go out, you try to get as many points as you can. You're also collecting these weird alien skulls for who knows what reason, but the reason I know is because it makes for a really, really good game. This was one of my favorite games that I played last year in 2023, and I'm finally getting around to giving a review of it. I think this is a game that everybody should try and probably purchase, depending upon what you like. I really, really enjoy it. So let me set a little bit of it up. Yeah, here's some cards that don't matter. In Revive, you're going to be emerging from the center and exploring the land. What land? This land. You are going to emerge from this little hole in the center and start expanding your network over the land so that you can then explore new tiles and place new buildings, all in the pursuit of moving up on these tracks over here. This is your own personal player board. Everybody also gets to be one of these 6 asymmetric factions. There are 4 in the base game, but we'll get to it in a second because the base game is this. This is the base game and there are 6. There's a little mini campaign in which you can unlock things that I find completely unnecessary, but you know, it's nice if you want it. So you take your faction, you take your board that everybody starts with, which looks a lot more complicated than it actually is, and you try to expand out over this land, scoring the most points by exploring things, building buildings, and moving up on these tracks. That's essentially the high-level overview. Now, on your turn, you can do 2 of these things. This is your little cheat sheet right here. We've already talked about sort of exploring, expanding, expopulating, expatriating. I think that's it. But the main thing that you are going to be doing in order to generate resources to do these things on the board has to deal with your cards. Everybody gets a starting hand of 6 cards where you're going to be choosing 3 of them to put in sort of this hibernation unready slot, and you're going to be choosing 3 of them that you can use. When you play a card, you can either use its top action or its bottom action. Generally, these cards are just going to give you resources, and the really neat thing about this game that I have to shift a little is that you're going to be sliding them under here into these slots. Boom, you get the resource here. I get a gear and a book, so I move up on my gear, my book track. Oh joy, I've gotten resources, but throughout the course of the game, you're going to earn yourself these little additional bonuses that you can upgrade this slot. So now when I put in a gray card, I get a gear, a book, and a wild gem, which are super useful. If I had this here, slotting that in, I wouldn't get this bonus because that color doesn't match. And so this already starts what is to be your engine. You want to synchronize your cards together. All of your starting decks are a little bit different in terms of what you can do, and that's also combined with the different factions as well, which all give you unique abilities. Instead of putting a building on a board, you can put one of these people on the board in specific spots. City spots, not in the desert. People want to live in cities, strangely enough. From my experience, with men with very long beards coming up to my house asking me for water, I assume people only exist in the desert, but I've seen a few people in cities here and there, and I guess this one that's going with the city theme. When you put people out on the board, you also unlock kind of permanent abilities for yourself. That's what this faction board deals with. The other cool thing about this game is that it's a bit freeform. If I've happened to amass a whole whackload of cards, let's say the entire deck, and you, my opponent, haven't, that's okay, because on your turn you can always do the hibernate action, in which you take up all the cards that you didn't use this round, you throw away all the cards that you did use in this round, and you have a whole new set to play with. Plus, you go up on this track over here that's just off camera, getting a little bit of a bonus, getting to amplify your engine a little bit, and propelling the game forward. So it's a really nice flow. I love games where you don't have to have the same amount of turns. My engine can be ramping up. Your engine might be quicker, and you might go to trigger the end of the game faster than I am prepared for. I might still have all these actions that I can do, but because you've hibernated more and moved the needle towards the end of the game, you might come out on top. The game ends when all of these alien skulls, which I absolutely put out at the beginning of the setup, are taken away. These alien skulls also represent a really neat way of doing end game objectives, because each person at the beginning of the game gets one of these cards, which gives them a unique scoring ability for each color of alien. So you know that people might be going for specific aliens. It gives you something to tailor your strategy around and some focal points to get some extra points at the end of the game, but it's never going to be consistent. This time I might be going for purple aliens because I'm activating this star ability of my faction more frequently than others. But my opponent, who's also pursuing the same strategy of getting as many star abilities on their person, might be scooping up all the gray ones. Or maybe they have a bunch of chests which give you additional resources that you can accrue throughout the game, and they're also fighting for the purple alien. It's a really interesting concept of what do you prioritize and how do you accrue these end game points and what you're going to commit to, versus them always meaning the same thing. I really like that the same component that we're all fighting over means different things to other people. I think that's really neat. The other fun part of the game is your player area, which has to do with these tracks. You'll see all these little circles, and there are 3 colors. Over the course of the game, you're going to be moving up on these tracks, and whenever you pass by a little circle, you'll get to unlock an ability. Now you start with 1 lightning bolt, which can be used to activate abilities, but as you proceed through the game, you might get additional lightning bolts, and you might unlock additional abilities. Here, my green track has to be up to 3, but my gray track has to have made it all the way up to 7 in order for this space to be unlocked. And me be able to choose from the market a special ability that I can now use on future turns. This board aspect is so satisfying. It's really satisfying to shoot up those tracks. Tech tracks I always have a good time with. Even when the market has a bunch of tiles that you aren't going to really get any value from, it's still an enjoyable time to move towards that goal. But I also love the idea of balancing these cards. All of the cards that you can pick up generally fall into sort of resources on the top and something cool on the bottom. And being able to use these cards for multi-purpose and then define your strategy as to when you're going to go for the bottom half versus the top half, I think is a really interesting balance. It also feels really great when you get a card like this one, which, because of this little row on the top, means you can slot something else in over it and trigger your engine again. But it's not just that your player board feels good, which it does, it's that everything in this game feels good. You're constantly getting those little hits of dopamine and feedback of expanding your empire while also racing against your opponents to try and lock down the main elements on the board. Whenever you put one of these houses down, you get to move up on those tracks. That's the primary way of moving up on the tracks. Whenever you get to put a little person down, you get to unlock those special abilities according to your faction, of which there are 12 because each faction is double-sided. And there's a way to specialize here, but there's also a way to not feel like you have to pursue just one strategy, because generally building buildings requires you to have gears, and exploring requires you to have food, and putting your people out on the board requires you to have books. They all sort of streamline in that one capacity, and your resources are used for that one thing. And in order to get the most out of the game, you want to be utilizing all of those things at once. So the tech tracks are fun. The multi-use cards are fun. Even this little switch action, which you can pull the switch down to get a resource of your choice on your turn, and then it resets every time you hibernate, feels very satisfying, especially when you start to play with it outside of the base game, where you can activate somebody's card that they've already placed down and get that thing instead. But by doing so, you allow them to take it and put it in their discard pile, meaning they're going to get to use it next turn. Playing with the cycle of cards feels really good as well. Struggling out to try to get to the corners of the map, which if you end up putting a person there, oh yeah, you can get there because you got to run through here, will give you a whole bunch of bonus points. These are all variable. double-sided and allow for a really nice shift in strategy and in subtle specialization. I really enjoy this game. Now, I'm not sure I enjoy it as much as a two-player experience. I played it at all 4-player counts. No, I haven't. I played it at 2 to 4. And I think I would opt for playing this at 4. I feel like 4 feels more optimal because more of the board gets explored and you have a little bit more competition between the choice spots on the board. You'll always have really nice spots on the board. Like here, for example, this is a great spot because you get to move up in in all of the 3 tracks. And if you put your bigger building, of which in this copy, I somehow for some reason got 4 larger buildings when I should only have 3, and 4 smaller buildings when I should have 5. But that's fine. I just turn one on its side and assume that it's the smaller one. If you put a larger building here, it costs more, but it gets you to go up twice on every track, which is very satisfying as well. But because this interacting with the map is so good and racing to spend the resources to get the most points, these range from 1 to 5 points depending upon what you flip over, and they always let you get an additional card and put into your deck and create that cycle and create that ever expanding amount of options as the board expands. I found it was a lot tighter at 4 players than it is at 2. At 2, you can easily go off in your 2 separate directions, never really fight for space. And I think that's where this game shines, is that tense battle of, do I reveal something? When do I reveal it? And do I have the ability to run in and claim a spot before somebody else? Or by revealing it, can I orient it? Say my buddy's there. If I reveal this, I'm looking to orient it so that I get a bonus right away just by that flip. And chaining those things together feels really, really good. This is a game that I am always excited to play. And I will admit, the 2-player, I am less excited to play. The last game I had was of a 2-player game, was good, but it made me realize how much better this game is at a larger player count. Even still interacting with that sideboard and getting to chain your cards together and unlock new spots on the track, because every time you do, you get to also increase your points on the side as you move up here. It's very satisfying. The production quality here is great too. Setting it up takes a tiny bit of time, but no more time than a regular game. Having these as really nice dual layered boards is very satisfying, makes it exciting to slot things into. But yeah, almost all aspects of this are really good. The only thing, other than the 2-player thing, that I might have some qualms with is they include this campaign game, this 5-session campaign where you can unlock 2 new factions, and you can then get allowed to play with the backside of the board. And then you unlock a couple extra tiles that you can flip in. This campaign feels really tacked on and completely unnecessary. And it's kind of annoying when they hide the rules of this campaign in these little cards as well, and they aren't just in the rule book. As somebody who doesn't like to play the family game version of games, who likes to jump right into the full experience, I was like, okay, I'm going to try, we're going to do this campaign mode. We just played the base game, and then we just flip through the cards to see, okay, what does this add? Oh, 2 tiles. Wow, what a monumental difference that's going to make on the game. It doesn't feel like it really adds anything to the experience, but I understand that some people might like that gradual progression. Some people might find it a little bit overwhelming, and I think that's what that's designed for, but it just felt, I don't know, a little tacked on. That's what all the cards that I threw away at the beginning were, that I was holding on to just until I did this review, is the little bits of story that they're going to offer you. Uh-oh, spoiler alert, read this at the start of your 4th game. Ignorance was what caused the end and the fall of humankind. Well, yeah, ignorant of all the rules, I don't know, it was fine. It didn't heighten my experience of the game whatsoever. It was just fine. I really, really enjoyed this game. I thought this was going to be like a 5 out of 5. I think at a 4-player, it is like a 5 out of 5. It's very, very good. At a 2-player, it gets to be that sort of 4.5 area. Still really good. Will play it, but not the exceptional pinnacle experience that I'm really glad that I started this off with a 4-player. But honestly, it's just because I prefer a little bit more of a tense battle of a game rather than the ability to kind of just go off and do your own thing. I feel like this board is designed for that interactivity, and when one person's going this way and the other person goes this way, and then the game ends around, I don't know, probably this amount. That's about half the tiles, right? You don't get to see the full board. Whereas in a 4-player, you'll see a lot more of the board having been revealed. You can stretch yourself a little bit more, and you will have had these battles with a few players around the table. And I think that's really exciting. This is a game where you're not going to get to do everything, where you're not going to get that engine to pop off. And I think that's a good thing. I think games that do that leave you with the sense of wanting more, with an excitement of wanting to play them more. And I think this one really, really just knocks it out of the park. So, where's the lid? Oh yeah, my cat kicked it off the table. Yeah, so Revive gets an absolute seal of distinction from me. It's really one of the best games to have come out last year. One that I thought for sure was a 5 out of 5. I mean, it's so subjective, right? It really depends, honestly, on the last play that I had. Will really affect the score. Because that's the play, I always get that one extra play in to make sure that I'm right, to make sure that I've seen everything possible. And then that 2-player kind of emphasized to me why I really, really enjoyed at the 4-player or the 3-player experience. 4-player is best, but 3 is good, and then 2 is good. So yeah, get this, immediately ignore the campaign, just read through it. If you're familiar with board games, just don't worry about it. It's completely nonsense. They also have an expansion for this called Call of the Abyss, which honestly feels like it's an auto get at this point as well. Just because this game is so good, I know it's going nowhere in my collection. I'll probably get the expansion, and I'll probably do a video on it as well to tell you all what it adds, the additional things that it brings to the table. Yeah, this is, you know what? I love games when you set them up out on the table, they bring you joy. I had that feeling with How to Save a World when I did the preview coverage on that. I'm having the same feeling with Revive right now. That just looking at the game being all set up just gets you excited. Gets you excited to play it again. It lets you remember the experiences that you had. Gets you excited for those possibilities. And so hopefully that excitement comes across. And if you like games with tech tracks and asymmetric powers, a little bit of area control in a sense, more racing to lock down spots, tactical back and forth, and some engine building, multi-use cards. All of those things are highlights for me in this game. Variable objective scoring with the little alien heads at the end. This is just a really well-made, chunky, satisfying game that you should definitely try if you like that chaining things together style of game where it doesn't end too quickly. That's Revive. Thanks for watching. I'm Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but go watch another video because apparently YouTube likes that. See ya. Woo!